What's up, everybody? SpiderriaN here, and welcome to another rambling anime review. I actually had a lot of fun doing the first one about Darwin's Game, and I wanted to talk about another anime I watched recently called Parasyte, the Maxim. And yeah, we're gonna talk about it. I don't know how in depth I'll go with spoilers or anything for this show, because I don't know, this show was a bit longer. It was a full season, unlike Darwin's Game, which is only 11 episodes long. Parasyte was the full 25 episodes, I believe. So I don't know how in depth with spoilers I'll be going when talking about plot points, but I just wanted to kind of talk about it again, or talk about this anime, because I really enjoyed it. It was another anime I watched recently, and I liked it. So yeah, let's just get right into things. So, Parasyte the anime comes from a manga of the same name, written and illustrated by Hitoshi Iwaki, and it ran from 1988 to 1995. So the manga series is actually pretty old. Well, not like super old, but you know, the manga had its time. It's come and gone. It's over now. There is no season 2 of Parasyte. They cover the entire manga's run in just one season. And I've never read the manga. Just gonna let that out right now. I haven't read it. And apparently, if you want to actually own the physical copies of it, apparently it's like really expensive. That's what I heard somewhere. I don't know how true that is, but that's something that I heard. But anyways, so Parasyte, the show and the manga, I guess is the right way to put it. They're both Parasyte. It's about an alien invasion. It's kind of hard to tell what exactly the parasites are. They're never really explained where they came from. If they're an alien, if it's just if it's like something that Earth itself, that nature made. The origin of the parasites is left ambiguous throughout the show. But essentially, these creatures come from the sky, and their goal is to take over a human's brain and basically make that human into their puppet. They take their head. They eat the head of their host, and then they control the host's body, and they can morph their face to look like different people and stuff. And basically, they're man-eaters. The parasites, in order to survive, eat other humans. And it's just one night, all of a sudden these parasites come out of nowhere and infect. And they take over. It's unknown how many people, but they basically take over a lot of people's bodies and replace them in society. But the story itself follows 17-year-old average ordinary high schooler Shinji Izumi, and he's infected with a parasite, but the parasite doesn't manage to get into his brain. It actually ends up getting trapped in his right hand instead. It was funny, he had headphones in, so the parasite couldn't get in through his ears, and then he tried to go in through his nose, and since he sneezed, and the parasite was then unable to get into his brain and had to settle for taking over his hand. And basically, the parasite is able to morph Shinji's hand to basically do whatever it wants. It can make blades, it can harden itself, it can create eyes and a mouth so it can talk and communicate. It's his own living organism, and it's basically able to mutate Shinji's hand and arm up to right above his elbow. It's able to mutate that and basically do whatever it wants with it. But since the parasite that wanted to infect Shinji was unsuccessful and ended up having to settle in for his hand, it now has to learn to coexist with Shinji in order for both of them to survive, because the other parasites are hostile to Shinji because he is not one of them. He has a parasite in him, but it didn't take over his brain. So the other parasites that were successful in taking over other people's brains are hostile, and the parasite that takes over Shinji's hand, it's named Migi. And I think that's the Japanese word for hand. So Shinji was kind of on the nose with it. But basically, so it becomes a story of how Shinji and Migi have to work together to survive against the threat of the other parasites, as well as to learn how to coexist with one another. And it's a pretty good story. The anime debuted in 2014 and ran till 2015. So it's an older show. It's not a new show by any means. It's been out for a while now, and I just decided, same with like Darwin's Game. I was just looking for animes to watch, and I was like, this looks interesting enough. So I decided to give it a go. And basically, overall, I would say it was a pretty good show. I really liked it. There are definitely a lot of themes about... There's a lot of philosophical things brought up. Like, what is mankind's role in the world? What is the point of life? What does it mean to be alive? And, and they bring up the question, is mankind a plague on the earth? Which is why the parasites came to basically cull the herd. And these are questions that are asked continuously throughout the series. And you're kind of left to come up with your own answers for it. You're kind of left... the story is laid out in front of you, and you're kind of left to just think about it on yourself. You take the story that's been presented to you, and you kind of draw your own conclusions about those philosophical ideals that are brought up, those philosophical questions. And that's one of the more enjoyable aspects of the show, is kind of sitting back and thinking like, hey, like, is mankind a plague on the earth? We kind of are. But at the same time, we're also the only species on Earth that understands what, like, good and evil is. So, you know how it is. So, So it's a very philosophical show with a lot of themes of, mankind needs to learn to coexist with its environment, needs to coexist with with the other living creatures on this Earth. Otherwise, if mankind's hubris grows too big, who knows? God sends down parasites that will take over your body and then eat other people to cull the herds and punish mankind for being arrogant and yada yada yada. But I really liked this. It was the clear themes about kind of protecting the environment, and trying to establish a balance with man and Earth. It was handled very well. I think where a lot of shows go wrong is that they kind of hit you over the head with like, hey, this is about blank. This is about protecting the environment, stop global warming and all this other stuff. It's really easy to just kind of take a premise like that and just get it to be really political really fast. And then no one's happy because, politics just serve to make everyone mad. So, but this show kind of tackles those themes in a pretty careful way and in an entertaining way as well. And it's a really enjoyable show to watch. I really liked the overall themes of it that they talked about with the protecting the environment and what is mankind's role in the world and all this other stuff. It was interesting. It was good. Food for thought. To kind of it left me thinking like, hey. Yeah, what is the point of life? Like what would happen if the parasites actually came down to Earth and acted this way? Like what would be, my response? What would be the response of mankind? And should mankind even intervene? Because is this a thing of nature or not? It's kind of brings up the nature versus nurture argument or line of thinking, which is very entertaining. From a technical aspect, the show's animation, it's pretty good. I would say it's, like I said, it's a little bit of an older show. Came out in 2014. So maybe by today's standards with some newer animation techniques, shows of today typically look a little bit better. But this show looks pretty well. And for being, a show that's, over 5 years old now, it doesn't really look its age. It still looks pretty good, I would say, by modern standards. The action scenes are enjoyable. The sound design... for when when parasites fight each other, it kind of just devolves into basically them just swarming and hitting each other with a bunch of razor sharp tentacles, which is honestly you would think it'd be kind of like a cop out, like, oh, they don't want to animate anything like more dramatic for these fights, but it's actually kind of cool because it's kind of an alien way of fighting, which is kind of the point of the parasites, is that they're kind of alien in nature. But B, it also just looks, it looks pretty cool, and the sound design really helps sell it. Like, you hear every individual, you know, clang of the parasites' blades going up against each other and stuff. And it's just, they're fun fight scenes to watch. So yeah, so the animation's solid. The soundtrack, I really loved this soundtrack. I really loved the soundtrack. If I'm looking it up correctly, let me make sure that I'm actually looking up the anime soundtrack and who the creator was. Let me see. I'm not sure. Okay, so I'm not sure who the creator of the soundtrack was. I can't quite find it here. I should have looked at it before time. I might, you know, edit something in real quick. Actually, like, let's just hold on a second. Okay. With the convenience of technology, I paused the recording for a quick second to actually look up the soundtrack. And Ken Ari. I think it's Ken Ari. I think that's how it's pronounced. Ken Ari. Amazing soundtrack. I really, really like the soundtrack. The opening's really good. The opening actually doesn't change. You know, most animes, about like halfway through a season, they'll change the opening. This anime's, the opening never changes. So it does grow old a little bit towards the like episode 20 mark. You kind of get a little tired of the opening. But up until episode 20, though, I was probably watching. I was sitting through every single opening. The opening song's really good, and the visuals are really nice. But the actual soundtrack itself that plays in the actual show with the scenes is amazing. Probably one of my favorite anime soundtracks that I've heard so far, because the tracks were like a mix of like synthwave and stuff to kind of just give you like that alien feel, you know, like your stereotypical like 60s alien sounds, you know, like alien movie sounds. That's what it kind of came off to me as, and I think that's what they were going for, and it was really enjoyable. I really like this soundtrack, the Parasyte soundtrack. I thought it was really, really good. So they did a great job with that. Besides that, I don't really think there's anything else to talk about from a technical aspect of the show. Animation is good. I think it still holds up to today. Soundtrack was really good. I only watched the sub for voice acting. I'm a sub, not a dub guy. So usually when I review an anime, it's just going to be the sub. I don't really bother with the dubs. I'm just the guy who prefers the Japanese voice acting. It kind of helps keep some more corny lines of dialogue. It kind of helps keep them immersed in the world and sounding cool, versus you hear it in, you know, an American voice with an American accent. It kind of grinds on you a little bit, but that's just my personal opinion. I'm a sub, not dub. Nothing wrong with dubs. It's just not my personal preference. So from a voice work perspective, all the voice acting sounded good. There was a lot of emotion put into the performance, I can tell. But in terms of, you know, like if there was a bad Japanese voice actor, I can't tell yet. I haven't watched enough anime to tell if there is a bad Japanese voice actor yet. So that remains to be seen for me personally. But so yeah, so from a technical aspect, the show, very well animated, great soundtrack, entertaining fight scenes, good character, good voice acting. So I guess now we'll kind of dive into more of the characters. And again, if I talk about any spoilers, I will be sure to tell you guys about it. I'll throw up a warning on the screen, and I'll say something. Because even though this is an older show, if you haven't watched it, I recommend watching it. I recommend giving it a watch. It is a bit more of a time commitment than Darwin's Game, because it is a full season. A full, like, stereotypical season of 25 episodes. So it's a bit more of a time commitment, but I really like the show. And, I really liked how the world they established with Parasyte, it was pretty realistic. I was talking to a friend earlier today about Parasyte, and and we were comparing it to Tokyo Ghoul, because Tokyo Ghoul is arguably the next closest anime to Parasyte, and we were talking about how, like, Tokyo Ghoul has really good characters. I don't like the Tokyo Ghoul anime, namely season 2, because of how far they strayed from the source material of the manga. And I just didn't really like what they did. Like, if quick side note, if an anime wants to go off track and kind of not follow what the manga originally goes with, I'm okay with that, because in a sense it's kind of like, hey, now if I really like this world and these characters in this story, now I'm getting 2 like alternate stories featuring all these characters. But that's only if the story is done well, and I don't think Tokyo Ghoul's story was done well. And then the next 2 seasons of Tokyo Ghoul, Tokyo Ghoul Re, they were just kind of like, they just were rushed. The pacing was just very fast and just next, okay, next, okay, next. The pacing was just bad. So that's my mini Tokyo Ghoul review. So now I don't have to make a full video about Tokyo Ghoul, unless you guys really want me to. But I won't have too many positive things to say about the anime. The manga, I've read most of the manga. I love it. The anime, season 1 is fine. Season 2 is not. That's just my personal opinion. But to get back on track, it's Tokyo Ghoul tangent done with. So my friend and I, we were talking about Tokyo Ghoul and kind of comparing it to Parasyte. And one of the things my friend brought up was how one thing that bothers me about Tokyo Ghoul is how unrealistic the world of Tokyo Ghoul is. Because with Tokyo Ghoul, it's like the ghouls are, like the presence of the ghouls are known. It's common knowledge that the ghouls are real and that they're a very clear threat. And yet society isn't any different, you know? There are still going to be kids hanging out after dark. People go to work as if there's nothing wrong. And yet there are these insanely powerful man-eaters who a normal person stands literally 0 chance against. And there is like an official agency to hunt these ghouls. And it just kind of feels unrealistic that society would not react to the ghouls' presence at all. Especially since it's clear that they've been around for quite a while. With Parasyte, humanity, the society that the world is built on, is very realistic, I would say. Because the parasites, they blend in perfectly with humankind. I mean, not all of them. Like, the parasites have to learn how to kind of be human to blend in better. But, since they can look just like anybody, they can blend in with into society very easily. Similar to the ghouls, they can blend in pretty well, since they look fairly normal. But with the whole, one of the big aspects of Parasyte is that the world, or at least, you know, this in Japan, people slowly become aware of the parasite's presence. It starts off as like rumors, then, you know, like online discussions, then, you know, tabloids pick it up, and then it does actually become national news that the parasites are real and that they exist. And people actually react accordingly. People start developing ways to kind of protect themselves and to... one of the things that actually gets brought up in the show is that people learn that by plucking a hair from someone's head when you greet them, it kind of like a new thing came up where people would pluck one hair from each other's heads as like a way to greet each other. And that's because if you're just a normal person, it'll just be a strand of hair. If you're a parasite, since the parasites take over the entire head, you're essentially tearing a tiny piece of the parasite off, and it will squirm and then shrivel up and die. And that's how you know that you are in the presence of a parasite, not a human. So the society becomes aware of the parasites, and actions are taken to actually combat them. It's not just like the ghouls where they're kind of just left to do their own thing, and then there is like a special task force that does stuff. It's people, the people react realistically, and people panic, people get scared, and they turn on each other because, you know, you could be a parasite because the parasites look just like everyone else. So, you know, that's kind of where Tokyo Ghoul and Parasyte differ, is in how the worlds are established. Parasyte has a much more realistic society displayed, where people gradually learn about the presence of the parasites and they react accordingly with fear, panic, and then ultimately kind of like acceptance that they're there and you just have to be careful now. Which is better than Tokyo Ghoul, where it's like there's these insane, like the ghouls are way more powerful than the parasites. Let's be honest. And there's just these insanely powerful ghouls running around who can easily kill 20 people, no problem. And I feel like society would be very different. But so, you know, I've seen a lot of people compare Parasyte to Tokyo Ghoul, so there's that kind of comparison out of the way, if I can say that. So I really like the world that Parasyte built. It felt like a very realistic world, and society reacts pretty realistically. Because I'm pretty sure, like, hey, if we found out parasites existed tomorrow, people would kind of be acting the same way, with fear, panic, and then trying to figure out how they can figure out who's who and whatnot. So it's got a great world behind it. And now I guess let's talk about some of the characters. And it's probably with the characters that I have the most amount of flaws with, I would say. Yeah, I would say it's probably the characters that I would say the biggest downfall of the show comes in. And I don't know if it's a manga thing or if it's just and maybe it's probably more likely just an anime adaptation thing. But the characters are definitely where I kind of have an issue with the show. So, Shinchi, I like him as a character. I think Shinchi is a good character. He's enjoyable to watch. And he goes through a lot of interesting character development because, like, a lot of fucked up shit happens to him. Because he is, he's kind of like Ken Kaneki, from Tokyo Ghoul, to just bring more comparisons between the two. Where he's not quite a parasite, but he's also not quite human. He's a mix of both. He's now trapped in between both worlds. No longer just human, no longer just a parasite. He is both. And so he has to kind of balance, the idea that he is, for a long while, he is the only person who knows about the existence of the parasites and why so many people are being slaughtered in droves by the parasites. And yet he has to worry about Migi, because Migi, in the very beginning of the show, just flat up threatens to essentially immobilize and turn Shinchi into a cripple if Shinchi does anything to jeopardize Migi, because Migi is a creature of logic. Migi does not have, when the show begins, Migi has no emotions. Migi is just out to survive, and simply protecting Shinchi is just a part of Migi's survival. So there's no real bond between the two of them in the beginning of the show. So Shinchi is not able to go and tell anybody about his problem, because Migi will either kill them or, paralyze and severely injure himself. So he's kind of trapped. And he goes through a lot of good character development as the show goes on. I will say probably about towards the middle episodes, maybe like 17 to like 22. Maybe, yeah, kind of like the late teens to the early 20s-ish, I would say. I feel like Shinchi's character kind of stagnates. He kind of gets into this role of being like, I'm going to protect everyone, and I'm not going to let anyone die. Humanity is so important. I can't, betray humankind. And then kind of just like whining about how hard it is. That's kind of, I got a little bit of a vibe from that. Where they kind of played around a little bit too much with Shinchi's struggle to balance, his situation, to kind of balance his life around his circumstance. They just I feel like they kind of hang on that point a little too long. Especially when there are some episodes where that's pretty much the entire focal point, is just Shinchi trying to, Shinchi struggling with his new circumstance. Which, I mean, it's good character development, but I just feel like it kind of goes on a little too long. But overall, I think Shinchi is a good character. I think he is a good character. I do like him. And I think the show is really good. But the characters are definitely where I say some of the show's strongest and weakest points are. Especially weakest. Because the next character I'm going to talk about is Satomi Murano. And she is essentially the main love interest for Shinchi. They're like not quite childhood friends, but like they've known each other for a while. They kind of like each other, but kind of don't, like they're going to talk about each other in the locker rooms, the kind of, high school crush, all that bullshit. That's kind of their situation in the beginning of the show. But I really felt like as the show progressed and Shinchi was, having his character development where he was kind of like Shinchi, some of his character development is he kind of ends up becoming less human and more parasite-ish, where essentially he just kind of starts acting more logically and without feeling. And I kind of felt like Murano's whole character ended up just being to show and comment on how much Shinchi is changing and how different he is from the beginning of the show. And she kind of just really began to feel like a broken record. And she kind of ended up becoming really annoying, in my opinion, because literally so many episodes, it was just her entire role in the episode was just to, be all cutesy with Shinchi and then he would say something, and then she would run away crying because he's so different now. He's changed. He's so different. She kind of started to get on my nerves because she just ended up sounding like a broken record, where she was just constantly like, Shinji, you've changed. You've changed. You're so different. And it's like, okay, lady, we get it. He's changed. He's different. He's got a fucking parasite in his hand that's going to kill you and kill him. Or seriously maim him if he doesn't like act differently, you know? And he goes through some pretty fucked up shit that would change anybody. But her whole character is just to basically cry and say, oh, you've changed. You're so different. What happened? Are you really Izumi-kun? She says that line at least 7 or 8 times throughout the show. She asks him, are you really Izumi-kun? And it's like, what? Like, and at no point, in the anime at least, does she ever find out about the parasites. Well, like, she finds out about the parasites, but she doesn't know that he has one. She doesn't know that he is one. Like, she doesn't find out until... I don't even think she does find out. I don't think it's ever confirmed if she finds out that he has Migi. So, yeah, she just constantly asks him, are you really Izumi-kun? Because he's just acting differently, because he's going through some shit right now. And it just got on my nerves, because it really felt like her entire character was just... She existed just to show, hey, he's not who he once was. He's different. He's changing. And it was like, we didn't need her to always be pointing out how he's changing, because, I mean, he's the main character of the show, so we see the change that he's going through as he is changing, because we're seeing the show from his perspective. And it really did feel like her entire character was just there to be like, you're changing. You've changed. Why are you changing? Why you change? Are you really Izumi-kun? And it just kind of got on my nerves. I just felt like she was kind of a throwaway character. And it might have just been an anime adaptation thing. Again, I don't know, because I haven't read the manga. And I don't know how unpopular of an opinion this is, but I didn't really like Murano very much. Or Murano. I don't know how exactly. I don't know if it's pronounced Murano or Murano. But I just didn't really like her very much. She just kind of felt bland. She didn't really do anything, and as I said, she was just always there. It felt like she was there just to be like, hey, audience member, he's changing. She can tell. See, she's telling you that how he's changed. He's not the same guy he once was. And it's like, well, we didn't need that. We can see it for ourselves because we're watching him change. So I really did not like her character. Her character just got really annoying to me, because I mean, maybe I'm missing out on something. Maybe she served a higher purpose than just being like, hey, you're changing. But she just got kind of annoying. I don't know. I just got kind of tired of her. But now, a character that I absolutely loved was Rico Tamara. And she is the first parasite that Shinji interacts with who's pretty intelligent and already has a pretty good understanding of how humans work. She isn't perfect, obviously. She still has some of her more logical and like parasitic tendencies. Like she is not above flat out just murdering someone right in front of pretty much anyone. But she is definitely the most intelligent parasite that Shinji goes up against, and she was an amazing character. She has a lot of character development. Because it starts off, she's kind of like the main antagonist for a little bit. She's kind of like this grave threat that's just hanging over Shinji. But then she has character development. She develops as a character and really changes. And she is kind of one of the main characters in the show that brings up a lot of the philosophical ideals of, you know, what does it mean to be alive? What does it mean to be human? She is kind of the source of that, because she kind of gains a self-awareness that most of the other parasites don't have. And she was a great character. She's probably one of my favorites in the show. I really liked her a lot. As a character, she was great. She was a great character. I really liked her. So yeah, I really liked her. She was probably my favorite character in the show besides Shinji. Cuz she was good at making you think, cuz like I said, she was the one who brought up all those philosophical questions, and she goes through her own character development, and there's kind of like this passing where Shinji is becoming more like a parasite, and Tamara is becoming more human, and it was really fun to watch that dynamic kind of happen. And I think she was just a great character all around. I really enjoyed her character. I'm not going to go into any spoilers about her character and what causes this development and why she is such a great character, but she was a good character. I really did like her. She was very entertaining to watch. A quick interjection and add-on from SpiderriaN in the future when going over is when talking about characters, I forgot to talk about Migi and the character of Migi. Migi is another one of the characters in Parasyte that's one of my favorite characters. Migi kind of goes through the same thing that Tamara goes through, with starting out very logical and very parasitic, but through Migi's interactions with Shinji and them, having such a unique relationship that almost nobody else in the anime has, of being both a parasite and human still, Migi undergoes a lot of character development and has to, learn to work with Shinji to ensure both of their survival. And I really like that. Migi was a great character, and I'll be honest, after watching this show, I wouldn't mind if my right hand became like Migi, provided that, we could form a good relationship, obviously. I wouldn't want, I wouldn't want Migi, I wouldn't want like episode 1 Migi, but like episode 24 Migi, hell yeah. So yeah, Migi is another one of those characters that's really good, and kind of shows how two species interacting with each other, coexisting with each other, can grow and learn off of each other, and for the better. Like Migi and Shinji both help each other develop as characters and develop as develop just as characters. They help them develop and become stronger together, and their relationship is really fun to watch. It's really entertaining, especially in the beginning when Migi is still learning about everything learning everything about humans. And Migi was another great character. Seeing Migi and Shinji develop as characters together, it kind of brings up the whole concept of, like, is it possible for different species to coexist peacefully together? And that's kind of what Migi was brought up to be. So, quick interjection. When I was listening to the recording, I realized I completely forgot to talk about Migi. So, here we go. Migi, I'm not talking about Migi, so don't worry. Migi is great. Back to the regularly scheduled rambling. Another character that I kind of have mixed opinions on is Kana Kamisha. Kimishima? Kana Kamisha? We're just gonna call her Kana, because that's easy to pronounce. So Kana, she's kind of a weird character. I don't really know what exactly her purpose was in the show. She serves an interesting role. She's kind of like the alternative love interest for Shinji, but not really. It's kind of like unrequited love. He's not really into her, but she's into him. But the reason for why she's into him, I don't really fully understand. And that's probably just more of like an anime trope thing, because she gets introduced where she's one of the earlier episodes, so it's not really too much of a spoiler. But she's hanging out with like this group of boys, and they're beating up one of Shinji's classmates. So Shinji's like, "Hey, stop!" And they kick his ass. And for whatever reason, the fact that Shinji would stand up to them, despite getting his ass thoroughly swatted, as if he was he got his ass swatted as if he was a bad boy who got his hand caught in the cookie jar. Like, he gets his ass kicked real hard. And yet, I think it's because even though he was weak, he stood up to her, or he stood up to the guys that were beating up his friend. He stood up to them, and then she could tell that kind of tell that there was more to him than meets the eye. So naturally, because anime, she falls deeply in love with him. And I don't know, I feel like, just given how realistic the characters in Parasyte were coming off to be, she just kind of seems like kind of just thrown into the mix. Like she was just kind of someone who was there. And probably the most unique thing about Kana is the fact that she, for whatever reason, it's never explained how people have this power or what it even is, but she is able to sense parasites. And she doesn't know it because she is introduced into the show where the parasites aren't public knowledge yet. So she doesn't know what it is, but she's able to sense Migi in Shinshi's hand, and thereby able to sense Shinshi. And she kind of takes this as like a means of, like, it's fate pulling them together. And Shinshi is just not having any of it. He's not into her at all. It's very clear. Although she does kind of come into the story probably at the highest point of Shinshi losing his emotions and kind of just becoming a being of pure logic. So maybe if she got introduced earlier, maybe there could have been more sparks between them. When I was watching Parasyte, I was reading the comments of the video of the episodes on Crunchyroll, because Parasyte is it's available on Crunchyroll if you want to watch it. I heard some of the comments were saying that the romance subplot in Parasyte is handled better on the manga, so it may just be an anime adaptation error that her character kind of just felt odd. But I'll be honest, I liked Kana more than Murano. I liked Kana more. I'll be honest. I thought she was better. I thought she was cuter, because it kind of felt like, since she was able to interact with the parasites to some degree, it felt like she was kind of more involved in the overall plot of the world, while Murano, she doesn't do anything with the parasites other than just freak out when she does encounter one. But that's kind of a spoiler. I'm not going to talk about. I don't think I'm going to be going into spoilers in this video, unlike with the Darwin's Game one, because the show as a whole, I think, is definitely one of those shows. It's better if you kind of experience it rather than just have someone talk at you about it. But it's a good show to have some discussion about because of the philosophical themes and dialogue that is brought up in the show itself. So there's all that. In terms of other characters, I think that's really all that I want to talk about. I mean, the main antagonist of the show, who ends up becoming the main antagonist, is this parasite called Goto, or Gato. I think it's Gato. I think that's how it's pronounced, Gato. And I'm not gonna go. I mean, there's really not much to spoil about his character. Basically, he's a dude who has like multiple parasites in him, so he's like hella beefy. And he's scary. He's a great antagonist. I really liked watching him, because he was like true evil. He was a parasite who, unlike Tamara, would not. He was unable to gain any kind of humanity. So he was just like an all-around bad guy, and he was a fun bad guy to watch, especially because of how utterly terrifying he truly was. He was a scary foe, and he was a cool one. But I guess that kind of wraps up all the characters, because I don't want to talk too much about the characters, because that would be getting more into spoilers. But it's funny because the characters, I definitely say they're the strongest, but also the weakest aspect of the show, because there's a lot of characters that are just that are just kind of thrown in for no reason. Like there's this one point where Shinshi he's searching for a parasite, so he left his home, and he's in this other town, and he encounters this schoolgirl who he stays at like the schoolgirl runs an inn, or like her family runs an inn, and he stays at that inn. And I don't know what the point of her was. She's like a middle school girl, and she has an obvious crush on Shinshi. But I don't really know what the point of her character was, because she gets a decent amount of screen time too in those few episodes that he's in that part of Japan. She's a pretty prevalent character in those episodes. But I just don't really know what her point was. She doesn't really bring much to the table, unless maybe I missed it. Maybe I'm just not remembering correctly. But her character just felt a little off, a little odd. Like she was just kind of someone who was just thrown in there for shits and giggles. So I don't know. And then another good character was a psychopathic murderer whose name is Uragami. I believe that's his name. Let me double check. Maybe make sure. That is actually his name. Did I pronounce it correctly? I think I did. Let me see. Yeah, Uragami. He's this he's a human convict. He's a psychopathic criminal. He loves killing people. And because he's a monster himself, he's able to tell who's a parasite and who's not. And he doesn't really play a role until the last few episodes, but he was, whoa, excuse me, he was a good villain too. I liked kind of seeing him, and I liked what his character was for. His character was clearly there to show that, hey, humans can be just as bad as the parasites with the whole murdering each other thing. And he was kind of there to kind of be like an example of the worst of humanity. Like, in a sense, Goto was kind of the worst of the parasites. Uragami was the worst of the humans. And I really liked that. I thought that was really, it was kind of cool to see that dynamic brought up. And the way his little story ends is very satisfying. So, yeah, that pretty much wraps up the characters. Overall, most of them are enjoyable. Really, the only character I have a major complaint about is Satomi Murano. She is really the only character that I have that I actively disliked. But for the most part, all the other characters, the main characters at least, were pretty solid. They were enjoyable to watch, and they usually brought good things to the show. She didn't bring anything good to the show. I did not like her character, I'll be honest. I don't know if that opinion is going to get me crucified, but I didn't like her very much. And then I guess to talk about the ending, without going into spoilers, this is going to be a spoiler-free review, or rambling more like it. That may be more accurate to say. I liked her. What was I saying? Oh yeah. I liked the ending of the show, without going into spoilers, because I'm not going to be doing spoilers in this episode. The ending, it's a good ending. It's kind of a bittersweet ending. I'll say that. It's satisfying because there is no season 2 of Parasyte. The first season, it's the only season, and it covers the entire manga. The manga only ran for 10 volumes, I believe, and the anime covers all 10. So it's so it has, the ending is definite. Like, there is no, oh, Parasyte 2 coming when? Like, no. The ending is just, it's that. The story begins, has its middle, and has its end, which is, I think, a good thing. I think it's good that the show has, you know, an ending. But the ending, kind of sad, but also like it's bittersweet. Like, you know, like the ending is for the best. Everything that happens is for the best, and you're happy, and you're ultimately happy with the fate that most of the main characters meet for the most part. So yeah, I guess that kind of wraps up all I really wanted to say. Parasyte, it was really good. I really liked it. I would recommend giving it a watch if you haven't already. You know, it is a little bit of an older show, unlike Darwin's Game, which, as of this recording, came out fairly recently. But yeah, Parasyte, it was pretty good. I really liked it. You know, the animation is good, the soundtrack is great, the fight scenes are entertaining, the characters are good for the most part, and the show is it is really good at making you think about, you know, like, what does it mean to be human? What is mankind's role in the world? And are we a plague, or are we not? Or are we both? And the show leaves you thinking about that kind of stuff. And it doesn't try to force any of those ideologies upon you. It's not trying to get you to believe, like, oh yes, all of mankind is terrible and we all suck. It kind of brings up arguments for both sides of saying, like, mankind is a plague. Like, yes, we are, but on the other hand, we're also, like, mankind is the worst thing the earth has to offer, but we're also the best thing the earth has to offer. And the show kind of brings that up. And that's what I really liked about it. And that's why I wanted to talk about it tonight. Because it was just a good show at just making me think about that kind of stuff, you know? Nothing like having an existential crisis at age 20. Although, let's be honest, I've been having existential crises for the past 6 years of my life. So, this isn't anything new. But, I guess to wrap things up, I really liked Parasyte. I thought it was really good. You know, I'm kind of getting on the train late because, you know, like I said, it came out in 2014. So I'm watching it a bit late, but I really liked it, and I would strongly recommend giving it a watch. If you liked Tokyo Ghoul a lot, like if you love Tokyo Ghoul, either for its manga or its anime, then I would say give Parasyte a try. The shows feel similar, but Parasyte kind of focuses a bit more on the overall world, while Tokyo Ghoul is very character-driven. I love the characters of Tokyo Ghoul. Parasyte is a little more world-driven in a way, and I like both of those. I like both of those series for those reasons. But yeah. So that is my rambling review of Parasyte. I recommend it. I'd say give it a watch. I enjoyed it, and I think you would too. If you like Tokyo Ghoul, you probably would enjoy Parasyte. And if you just like really entertaining stories about, characters having about two different species that couldn't be more different, having to come together and coexist, and having some philosophical themes dropped on your lap for you to chew on for a bit, then this is definitely a show for you. So, yeah, well, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the rambling review. I don't think I rambled as much this time. I think my thoughts were a little more coherent than my Darwin's Game review, but that's because I didn't do this at 2 in the morning. I did this at 1 in the morning. And let me tell you, there was a significant difference in my mental capabilities between 1 a.m. and 2 a.m. So, it's pretty amazing. But, yeah, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. And, I don't know what anime I'll talk about next. I'll talk about something next, though, because I actually really like these. I really like doing this. It's really fun to just kind of, just spill all of my brains out for the internet to hear and to see. And, yeah, so thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Give Parasyte a watch. It is available on Crunchyroll, and I think it might be available on some other streaming websites, like maybe Hulu. I'm not sure. I watched it on Crunchyroll. It's on Crunchyroll for sure. So give it a watch. And, yeah, that's it from me. So, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. And I will see you in the next video of whatever I make. Bye-bye.